Get ready for the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It's still real to me, damn it.
Say it with me, folks. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Still Real to Us show. Post-Memorial Day weekend to you. How are you? May 31st, 2012, episode number 120. Welcome. We are in special show mode. I am the champ, Jeff Peck. Joining me, as always, Redneck Revolution Rise Up, the one and only Captain Obvious. Captain, you ready to sit and talk some top 5 summer wrestling feuds of all time?
Well, let's see. It's just the end of May, Memorial Day. Got the hot dogs on the grill. Might as well take a break, kick back, have a beer, some hot dogs, and talk a little summer wrestling feuds.
Absolutely, man. And this is pre-recorded. We're gonna tip our hats to that. We're not talking wrestling for this week. We're not wrapping up Raw or the latest news, and it's gotta be like that for this week and next week. So June 7th show as well, because quite frankly, Captain and I, just as Captain put it pretty elegantly, we're just taking some time off. We haven't done a pre-recorded or a special show since the very first episode of 2012, so we're taking some time off. We're relaxing a little bit. We went straight through WrestleMania, the Royal Rumble Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania 28, Extreme Rules, and then in Over the Limit. And now we're just taking 2 weeks off. We're back into regular mode on June 14th. But nonetheless, we're going to have a lot of fun here talking some top 5 summer wrestling feuds of all time, our personal lists, and better yet, Captain already teasing it to me prior to the show. He has worst summer wrestling feuds. But before we get into our list, Captain, when I tell you, you're a longtime wrestling fan just like myself, but when I tell you, like, give me some fond or what it means to you, what summer wrestling means, how do you usually sum that up into either one word or even a sentence?
Well, growing up, summer feuds meant Great American Bash. I mean, it was the time of year for these just monstrous feuds that would lead into war games. And a little bit of a teaser here, that one of those matches is on my list for my top 5 feuds. But that's what wrestling always was in the summer. Usually the winter and the fall months and then early spring was always WWE time leading into WrestleMania and stuff like that. But then in the summer, WCW always owned the summer. I mean, even if you go back to like the birth of the NWO, that came in the summer. All these things came during the summer times. WCW was that was their time to shine, but so they had 3 months. The rest of WWE had the other 9.
That's a really good point, man. I did not really think about that till you said it. Is that typically the summer months, even for me growing up, would be WCW and NWA, while the WWE kind of took like a step back and they just kind of, prepare themselves for Survivor Series or started the ramp up towards WrestleMania that year or even the Royal Rumble. And it was always WCW would be really dominant in the summer. You brought up before their Bash at the Beach, 1996, the NWO was born. Another summer WCW moment that immediately comes to mind to me, Captain, is when Goldberg won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship there in July at the Georgia Dome. That's a really good point, man, about WCW. I mean, I really never thought about that, but that is very true. If you had to compare the two, Captain, the Great American Bash versus SummerSlam, at least in my opinion, I'd go Great American Bash.
Yeah, me too. And as I was doing the research, I was going through I went back to basically my premise was take the 2 main drawing events of the summertime and look for feuds that either culminated or kind of peaked, either at SummerSlam or during the Great American Bash. And although I have more WWE moments on my list, most of the main events for WWE during like the 90s, like the late 80s, early 90s, it was always like they were always like random tag team matches. Like it was Hulk Hogan and Bruce Beefcake against Randy Savage and Zeus one year at SummerSlam. That was a main event. It was just these random pairings that would then lead up to a Survivor Series match or a WrestleMania match.
Yeah, exactly. This is when you think WWE wrestling, and when I asked that question of you, of like if you could sum up wrestling in the summer in one word or even a sentence, personally for me, and I wasn't really thinking about WCW at the time, but when you think maybe just WWE or today's current product, I would put lull. It is a huge lull season, and I think you could, when I say that, you could look at examples the last 2 years, Captain. In 2010, you had the Nexus invasion, and in 2011, you had CM Punk doing his angle where he was being a rebel, and he is what he is right now as a character, the best in the world. And those were two storylines that attempted to grab wrestling fans that were veering off the path a little bit and getting into summer mode, because I think a lot of people can say this in general, especially here in the United States, but when the summer comes, even though myself and Captain are long removed from education, high school, and all that good stuff, for me, Captain, it's still, summer is like when you just give your mind a break a little bit, and that's, even as wrestling fans, we have a tough time getting back in the product. And at least from WWE's standpoint, the last 2 years, they've done a good job. When we want to veer off there and maybe not watch Monday Night Raw on a Monday night and maybe go do something else with our family or friends or loved ones, they do a good job keeping us back in there. Is that the same thing for you, man? When you think summer wrestling and basically summer is like 8 to 12 weeks here in the States, and you just kind of soak up the good weather and good energy, good vibes, good times with friends as much as you can, while wrestling kind of gets off on the side.
Well, yeah, and plus you got to remember like the days are longer, so you're able to go out and do more things, and then finally like about 8:30 things are winding down. By the time you come to the house, you're like, oh crap, I missed like the first 30 minutes of Nitro or Raw, and do you really want to jump in because you got other things you're putting off during the day? So and that's why I think for a long time, a lot of the wrestling companies didn't really put their main feuds on during the summer. Even last year when we talk about, when you and I were talking about the CM Punk, basically versus the WWE for the most part, we thought about, were they jumping the gun when they brought CM Punk back after just only being gone for a couple of weeks? It was kind of like WWE's way of trying to put on something during the summer that really would grab the fans' attention and hold on to it. And for the most part, it did. But then right after the summer, we had that thing where we didn't know what they were doing with CM Punk's character. So it was, they're trying now at least. I'll give them credit for that. Like Ring of Honor really started when they did their Summer Punk angle. So a lot of the other companies are trying to pick up on it. But for the most part, for the last 25 years, summers have kind of sucked for wrestling.
Absolutely. I mean, you got people going away on vacation, and the last thing they're thinking about is, oh, well, let me sit down on vacation here with the family. I'm going to watch Raw for 2 hours, or more importantly, Captain, and this is something we could touch upon here as well, is when it comes to summer wrestling, WWE is going to go and expand Raw for 3 hours. So it's like I don't know if it's necessarily the right time to do such, and ratings could be heavily, hit. WWE is doing like 3.0s right now when it comes to Raw, and I could definitely see that Raw rating drop, maybe like a quarter to 2.75. It's just a really difficult time for wrestling. I think you're going to see it a lot in weeks that you and I do the show here, especially after maybe it gets better leading up to SummerSlam or even post SummerSlam. But it becomes a really slow time. We see it in people who listen to this very podcast, people who visit WrestleChat.net, Camel Clutch blog. Wrestling is not on the top of people's minds. So it's probably going to surprise a lot of people when you and I go over our list here, top five wrestling summer feuds, that we were even able to put together a list.
Yeah, I mean, you're that. I had a hard time at first, trying to come up with stuff, and then I can't like then as I was going through my list, I I did the same thing with the tag teams. I had one ECW, one from WCW, and the rest were WWE.